Welcome. This is Hidden Gems. I'm Allison, and I'm joined here by Ashley, Julia, and Julie. And we're going to be talking about some adult books, both fiction and nonfiction, that haven't gotten quite as much attention as we think they deserve. And I'm first up. My first book is Medicus. As you can see, the subtitle is A Novel of the Roman Empire. It's by Ruth Downey. It's the first in a mystery series. Sadly, the book is out of print, but we still have the ebook and the e-audio book, and the book is available through Prospector. Rousseau is a doctor who serves Rome in the far-flung area of Britannia. And what I loved about this book is there's so much in our history and our and then in literature about British colonialism and the British going off to civilize all these places. But in this series, it's the Romans who are in Britain teaching them about sewers and roads. Rousseau's an amazing character. All the characters are well developed, and I love the whole series as books or audiobooks. And Ashley, you're up.
Yes, my first book that I think is a hidden gem is The Wolf in the Whale by Jordana Max Brodsky. We have a hard copy of this, an ebook, and streaming on Hoopla. This book is historical fiction on a technicality. There is one small piece of recorded history of Vikings meeting Inuit people, and from that small piece, a gorgeous tale is woven. The story begins about 1,000 years ago when an Inuit baby is born to a tribe that is on the brink of starvation. The Inuit people believed that the souls of family members live on in their descendants. And so, although the baby is born female, he's raised as a boy named Omat after his father, whose soul he has. A lot happens to and within Omat. Then, when Omat is a teen, not a team, the Vikings arrive on their shores. And not only do the people clash, their gods and mythologies clash as well until there is an all-out war for survival. Each new section of the book started with the same event, Omat being born and almost not surviving, and went on to describe how it affected the other characters until it built into this full, glorious story that I couldn't put down.
I love that cover with the wolf. I've been staring at it as you're talking.
It's gorgeous.
Great.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that one sounds so good, Ashley.
Changing things up a little.
I was going to say, slightly different feel with this one. So I have to start this one off, The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels by India Holton, with a quote. So, quote, "We are exactly that, senor. Corsairs, robbers, pirates. I, however, am also a bibliophile, and you are impeding my visit to the library. So either assassinate me now and get it over with, or kindly step aside." That just like sums it all up, like in a quote. This book is fabulously over the top and fun. If you want a read that doesn't take itself too seriously, makes you laugh out loud with its overt and subtle cleverness, and includes a cast of kooky characters, this is the book for you. This book is about Cecilia, who is not only a Victorian lady, but a mischievous pirate as well. Those two titles definitely don't have to be mutually exclusive. She and her aunt are doing just fine until certain men decide to show up and make a mess of things. Now, Cecilia must navigate Ned, an assassin who is hired to kill her and who she also might be in love with. Don't worry, he feels the same. And the murderous Captain Morvath, who is out for control. Both men must learn that lady scoundrels have more than just dainty gloves up their sleeves. This book is chaos and humor and complete absurdity, and honestly, I loved it. If you're looking for a romance that is by the book, this would not be the one. But if you're willing to go on a crazy ride in a flying house with a bunch of lady pirates, then brandish your weapons, scout out some jewels to steal, and prepare to be amused. This one was so much fun. Highly recommend.
Ooh, I like it. All right, we're going to shift here,
now
friends.
Really another change.
Go with me. This is a horror thriller debut, The September House from Carissa Orlando. This was recently recommended to me by a good friend, and she reads across genres, and I thought, let me give it a try because horror is really having a heyday and quite popular right now. So home ownership seemed out of the reach for Margaret and Hal. Then they see a listing, and it's a beautiful Victorian house on Hawthorne Street. And they notice the listing price. It's incredible. They couldn't believe their luck, but there's a catch. The house is seriously haunted. In fact, every September, the walls drip blood. And that's not all. As the month progresses, ghosts of the former inhabitants begin to stir up all kinds of trouble with their incessant screaming. You know what they say about something being too good to be true? But oh, our dear Margaret, she's not a quitter. She is not giving up. This is her house. Even though the house has rules, she adapts. Hal, on the other hand, after 4 years, he just decides this is all too much. He disappears without a trace. So their adult daughter, Catherine, comes to stay at the September house, as it is dubbed, to help look for Hal. But Catherine doesn't know about all the home's quirks. And wouldn't you know it, it's almost September. The haunting will soon begin. This is a complex mother-daughter relationship. Margaret works to shield her daughter from the house's hauntings while things grow ever more dangerous. But Margaret knows she can survive anything, and she's not giving up on this house. It's a read that will appeal to both non-horror readers like myself, because it has that thriller, complex relationship added to it. But then there's plenty of twists and enough terror to delight the true horror fans.
Sounds like a good one. Cool.
Terrifying. Okay. Well, so my next book is What Storm, What Thunder by Miriam J.A. Chansey. I wouldn't call it historical fiction because it's set in 2010, and that's a little too soon, but it is based on a historical event. In January of 2010, the earthquake hit Haiti, and that registered a 7.0 on the Richter scale, and it was set right outside the main city of Port-au-Prince. But this is a work of fiction that focuses on a range of people, from poor people, wealthy people, expats who are back visiting, people from the United States who are there doing business, a local woman who kind of knows everything and sees all these people because she is a beggar and sits outside this big hotel. And this follows these people and tells like how they got to this place and this time, and then what happens during the earthquake and the aftershocks, and then of course as the country tries to recover. It's not an easy read because it was a horrifying earthquake, but the language is just beautiful and lyrical, and you're so pulled in by these characters and frankly terrified for them. One little mistake, a couple is leaving the hotel and one of them goes back up to the room to get something, and that turned out to be a horrible mistake, but well worth the effort to read this beautiful book. That's What Storm, What Thunder. And Ashley.
That's me, Brotherless Night. Wow. I mean, check out the pull quotes on the front. Britt Bennett and Celeste Ng. They say it all, but this is a historical fiction. And usually when I think of historical fiction, I think of Victorian times or even World War times, but this is set in 1981. Where 16-year-old Sashi dreams of becoming a doctor as a decades-long civil war devastates Sri Lanka, her home. She accepts a job working as a medic in the field hospital for a militant group in her town. But after that militant group murders one of her teachers, Sashi begins to question where she stands. This is when she joins a secret project that is documenting human rights violations and embarks on a dangerous path that is going to change her entire life, the entire trajectory of her life. This was really hard to read, but I also couldn't put it down. And I love when that happens. The bravery and the heart of the narrator, Sashi, was incredible. Devastation after devastation reigned, but life still went on. This book also made me think about how important it is not just to be loved, but to be known. and also that stories are so important and writers are heroes. When I closed this book, that was my thought. Writers are heroes, stories need to be told. Just beautifully written.
Wow, that sounds so good. Okay, I have The Seed Keeper by Diane Wilson. And this fiction novel was unknown to me until it was selected for one of our library-run book clubs, and I am so glad that it was chosen. Written by an Indigenous author, The Seed Keeper follows the life of a Dakota family and the struggles they face in protecting their land and preserving their heritage. This book follows Rosalie Ironwing, who grows up with her father in the woods, sustained on the beauty of nature and stories of the Dakota people. When her father doesn't return from checking traps one day, Rosalie is sent to a foster family in a nearby town where she meets a kindred spirit, albeit different in many ways from her, in Gabby Makes Peace. The two become fast friends who not only support, but definitely challenge one another to think about what they hope to leave behind in the world. Rosalie goes on to marry, have a child, and ultimately find solace in the garden dirt of her husband's farm. The legacy of seed keeping, however, is threatened by not only the natural elements, but by the man-made impacts of a local chemical company moving in. As Rosalie navigates the upheaval of her life, in many ways, she must confront her difficult past and find her own identity through the strength and soul passed on through her ancestors. This is a story of women who protected their own, preserved their heritage, and kept a reserve of seeds throughout generations of loss and hardship, a way to grow good things out of the ash that's been left. This book is insightful and interesting, with an amazing emphasis on natural and man-made impacts on individuals' livelihoods and legacies. This is certainly a powerful read and also a difficult read at times, with content warnings for racism, abuse, suicide, grief, death of a parent, and alcoholism. This book will make readers think, show a myriad of perspectives, and encourage everyone that when one holds on to the seeds of what's important, good things can always still grow. That is The Seed Keeper.
We did that one at a couple of our book clubs and really generated great conversation at both book clubs.
I want to touch the cover. It's so beautiful.
That struck me too, Ashley. Yes. All right, we're going to shift a little here and we're going to lighten it up a little. All right, let's talk sports, my friends. We're going to move into nonfiction, okay? I am a huge sports nut. This selection is for all the sports fans out there. I root for many of our local teams. I found this book fantastic, fun, and perfect to give as a gift. ESPN personality Mike Greenberg, or Greeny, as many may know him, and his producer Paul Hembo, they partner to declare which legends own which numbers. They use short essays to make their cases, lots of stats, research. For example, the number 7. Here in Denver, a Broncos fan, we would quickly argue, hello, John Elway was the greatest ever to wear that number. But was he who Greenberg and Hembo selected? So they go from 1 to 100. In most cases, it's about the men and women who wore the numbers, but other digits are awarded to represent total victories, winning streaks, or even the number of years that they dominated their sports. We're talking Babe Ruth to Tom Brady, Serena, Billie Jean King, Michael Phelps, Muhammad Ali, and I could go on and on. And as sports fans are apt to do, you'll find yourself nodding in agreement as you read or quickly disagreeing with the selections made. In fact, my review said, I would argue number 15 needs to be updated to Nikola Jokic. And it also would have been nice to see a few more women represented in the top 100, but hey, Greenberg himself readily admitted we could argue with him all day long and he'd still be right. Oh, Mike. What I loved about this book is that the authors looked across so many sports, many of which I don't follow or were before my time. And it was just delightful. So a fun twist and, again, great for gift giving.
I think people need to realize that we do these book talks not for other viewers, but for ourselves. I've already placed a couple of things on hold.
So true. Me too.
Okay, changing it up once again.
Oh,
So,
yes.
Yeah.
This is I also put that book on hold while you were talking. So I'm excited to talk about this book because I'm always excited to talk about Pete Holmes. He is one of my favorite comedians. And I love the title of this book because it makes it seem like Pete Holmes is claiming that he is a comedy sex god. But shortly after you start reading it, you realize that these are three separate topics about his life. That when you combine comedy, sex, and God, you get Pete Holmes' life and stand-up. His writing, like his comedy, is philosophical and spiritual and just so sweet. So Pete was raised an evangelical Christian, but ended up being terrified of spending eternity in hell, mostly because he questions the sinfulness of premarital sex. He's not having it, but he's just wondering about it. So he re-examines his beliefs and creates his own model of faith that helps him cope. His spiritual journey continues even today, as shown through his comedy. The best description of this book that I've read is, imagine if Be Here Now by Ram Dass was penned by one of the funniest people alive. I want more people to know about Pete Holmes. He's like the least problematic comedian out there. His stand-up has no meanness whatsoever. I wouldn't describe it as clean, but somehow he just wonders about something silly and he invites his audience to wonder about it too. He has a talent for writing smart, thoughtful comedy, and reading his book was like getting a deeper dive into his mind. Also, sorry about the pre-marriage. I realize, could we put an edit on that?
But we can do.
Sorry. Trigger warning. There's sex in this. As it says in cursive. Oh, and here I am again.
Yeah, here's Ashley again, because we're on a little run with our nonfiction titles right now.
Our nonfiction titles. So switching over a little bit from one celebrity to a more known celebrity. This is not a book about Benedict Cumberbatch, and it's actually not a book about Benedict Cumberbatch, not completely. It is a heartfelt memoir about one woman's midlife obsession with Benedict Cumberbatch and the power of reclaiming our passions as we age. The author was a new mother who was feeling like she was losing touch with who she was. And one day while watching Sherlock, she fell in love with Benedict Cumberbatch and allowed herself to become a little bit obsessed with him. And in that obsession, she found fulfillment and community. And then she invites us to explore how society views the things that interest women specifically, from boy bands in adolescence to pumpkin spice lattes in adulthood. She asks, why are the things that women like made fun of, or worse, even vilified? She found her thing in Benedict Cumberbatch, and she wants you to find your thing too. And I read this at the right time in my life. I entered motherhood and I was feeling like my only interests were mashed bananas and Miss Rachel. And growing up, I loved boy bands and I loved Twilight. And then I was kind of ashamed of that as I grew up. And I realized that as an adult, I don't really know what my interests are. And so this book encouraged me to explore the things that I like now and encourages me to love them unabashedly, audaciously, and shamelessly. So pumpkin spice it up, everyone.
Never apologize for loving in sync ever.
Oh,
ever.
I'm a Backstreet Boy,
Oh, okay. That's okay. That's okay. We can agree to disagree. We can deal with that later.
Exactly. No shame in loving in sync.
No.
Or
BSB.
Or BSB.
Wow. I just put that one on hold also.
I was gonna say that sounds fabulous. Also, in the similar vein of pop culture, to a degree, I'm going to talk about Dress Code, Unlocking Fashion from the New Look to Millennial Pink, which is a nonfiction read that I loved. Why do we wear what we wear? In this insightful essay collection, Veronique Hyland, who currently is the fashion features director at Elle magazine, addresses this question along with other fascinating style trends throughout history. The publisher summary says it best, so I'm going to say some of that little snippet. What does dressing for yourself really mean for women? How should a female politician dress? Will gender differentiated fashion go forever out of style? How has social media affected and warped our sense of self-presentation? And how are we styling ourselves expressly for it? Not everyone participates in painting, literature, or film, but there's no opting out of fashion. Clothes mean something, even if you're just wearing jeans and a t-shirt. I thought the synopsis of this was so interesting. I'm not even a big fashion person, but I have bookmark tabs all through this read, tracking all the thought-provoking quotes I came across. This book is engaging with an almost eerie depth in societal commentary that one might not expect. Fashion permeates so much of our lives, and like it said, there's no opting out, even if your fashion statement is that it means nothing to you. The effort or lack thereof is all a fashion choice. It's funny because I don't consider myself, as I said, very fashionable, or at least not in keeping up with current trends. However, I find the psychology behind fashion so fascinating. This book definitely delves into that view a bit. And I think for anyone intrigued by why trends become trends and where inspiration is sparked, this read will be up your alley. Whether you have an interest in social movements or want a real take on The Devil Wears Prada, I recommend this one.
I like it. That's fascinating. Oh, okay. Okay, people.
Okay, bringing it down.
Yeah, no, this one's phenomenal. Okay. This is a biography. And as Ashley talked about, I love people's stories. And this is one that needed to be told. This is The Short and Tragic Life of Robert Peace. It's a biography written by Jeff Hobbs. And Jeff was Robert's roommate for 4 years at Yale University. Robert, a brilliant young African-American man, grew up in crime-ridden Newark, New Jersey. Dad in prison for murder and mom working many low-paying jobs. She sacrificed and sent him to a private middle and high school, and ultimately it was a bank executive who sponsored Robert's attendance at Yale. There he studied molecular biophysics and biochemistry. In addition to his studies, Robert developed a very successful business dealing marijuana at Yale to make money. Life wasn't easy, and Robert carried with him the tough dual nature of his existence, trying to fit in at Yale and then going at home on breaks. And yet he graduated with honors. Robert went back home to teach at his alma mater and won Teacher of the Year. However, his side business was expanding, and it eventually became much more of his focus. It was that drug dealing that ultimately cost Robert his life. This selection is fantastic for book clubs. It encompasses so many conflicts in America: race, class, drugs, imprisonment, education, family, friendship. It is about the collision of two fiercely different worlds: the ivy-covered campus of Yale to the slums of Newark, New Jersey. I can't begin to fathom the difficulty Robert faced as he tried to go from one to the other and then back again. Fun fact, this biography was just adapted into a film, Rob Peace, and was shown at the Sundance Film Festival. I look forward to its release and watching Robert's story being told on the big screen.
Wow. Okay, now we're changing things back up completely again. One of the things we've noticed, book publishing happens more in some months than others. October's really big, March is big for a lot of new books. It's weird to me when a lot of books get published in December. They seem to miss out on some attention because they're not going to make any best of 2023 lists or something, and people are busy with other things. And so I actually have 2 books that came out in December of this year. This one is The Last List of Mabel Beaumont by Laura Pearson. Mabel is an older English woman. Her husband has passed away suddenly, and she is grieving. She's afraid to leave the house. She kind of is thinking her life is over, basically. She's elderly, her husband's gone. There's not much more to do. But her husband, Arthur, he was a list and note maker. He made grocery lists and to-do lists and left notes for people all over the house, all their married life. And after he's died, she has found one last note that says, "Find D," just the letter D. And Mabel ponders that and thinks, It must mean her friend Dorothy, who she lost contact with 60 years ago through some horrible argument they had. They were best friends growing up and as young through young adult, and then they've had no contact for 60 years. So Mabel enlists some people to start helping her to try to find Dee. To be honest, the book is a little predictable. We know that really that search and that contacting people and getting out and participating in the search is going to help her with her grieving and really reconnect her with the world. We know that, but we're so happy to go along with that ride. But there's also quite a few plot twists about Mabel, about Dee, and about this search. So I just found it heartwarming and charming. And also I loved the cover. Not always why we choose books, but actually sometimes it is. So, and then I have another one, but very different. This is Kinfolk by Sean Dietrich. Sean Dietrich is also known as Sean of the South. He is a podcaster, comedian, essayist, author. He writes columns for a lot of newspapers and for his own blog, all about life in the South, especially in Alabama. And he has written a few novels also. In this one, it's set in Alabama in the 1970s, and the main character is Nub. Nub is a mess. He's old, he's not healthy, he smokes too much, and he drinks way too much. He has wrecked every relationship in his life, his wife, former wife, daughter, friends, family. He's wrecked every car he's ever owned, which has been many because he keeps wrecking them. The only reason he's not in jail is because he's related to most of the policemen in town. And also if he was in jail, there'd be no one to do the city work of mowing the lawns for the city and things like that. That's his job. But he has one chance for redemption. He meets a teenage girl who's pregnant and who's an orphan and who's been sent to a not even a foster home, an orphanage, basically, but one for unwed mothers. And he gets involved with her life and then reconnects with his daughter. I got about halfway through this book, but then I read such great reviews of the audiobook that I just stopped reading the book this week and put the audiobook on hold instead, because I really want to finish on audio. He narrates it himself and it's supposed to be amazing on audio. So I'm going to wait and finish it up that way. And that's Kinfolk.
I love when an author narrates their own books. It just adds so much depth to it.
Yeah.
It's like reading it how they want you to read it.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone, this is my favorite book of all time, and it is truly a hidden gem. I found Marjorie Morningstar through another book called The End of Your Life Book Club, where basically a dying woman who read every book she had ever wanted to read says that this is her favorite one of all. And so obviously I had to read it. It is about a 20-year-old woman in Manhattan in the 1950s who wants to be an actress. She falls in love with a director who wants to be a bachelor forever. He has no interest in long-term commitment or marriage or anything like that, and he often says so. But other than being an actress, a husband is the only thing Marjorie wants. And her name isn't Marjorie Morningstar, it's Marjorie Morningstern. And she changes it to Marjorie Morningstar to sound more appealing. Specifically, Marjorie Morningstar wants this director to be her husband. What follows is 500 pages of what these two go through. And boy, oh boy, do they go through some things. Their love is huge and destructive, and it spans 2 decades. And in my opinion, the ending is perfect because no one I've spoken to can agree whether it's happy or sad. I personally think it's a happy ending, but I have talked to younger women who are like, oh, it's devastating. It's the saddest ending ever. I thought it was happy. It gives Mrs. Maisel vibes, Gone with the Wind vibes. And I've never read anything that so accurately portrays that bittersweet sorrow of youthful love. And I will say it won't be for everyone, but if it is for you, it will be your favorite book ever. It will be, you'll be, 100 years old. And when someone asks you what your favorite book is, you're going to say Marjorie Morningstar. I'm confident.
Wow, way to sell a book, Ashley.
I
Holy
was
cow.
gonna say, I'm gonna have to read this one now.
Give it 2 pages. If you're not into it, give it up. It's not for you. If you're into it by the first 2 pages, it will be your favorite book.
What a sell. I love it.
Why'd the rest of us even need to show up today?
Excuse me. Everyone put that one on hold.
Okay. Oh, okay. Wow, Julia, you're gonna top that now.
I know, right? I'm going to talk about There's No Such Thing as an Easy Job by Japanese author Kikuko Tsumura. I practiced, I tried. And translated by Polly Barton it's a unique contemporary fiction story filled with funny and relatable moments, as well as a sprinkling of magical realism. This book is a quirky read about a young woman trying to find her stride within the working world. Originally written in Japanese and translated into English, this book looks at the everyday ups and downs of finding work through a temp agency. Whether creating content for rice cracker packaging and pondering where all the bus ad businesses are disappearing to, or posting up in a hut in the middle of the woods, these hilariously ordinary jobs will resonate with readers. The writing style of this one is pretty matter of fact, and the jobs are somewhat mundane and repetitive, yet I needed to keep reading. I don't know if this happens to you all, where logically there isn't much tying you to a book, and yet, whether because it's well written or there's a character you like, you become invested. I think it was a little bit of both of these things for me with this one. I appreciated the main character. She was mature, hardworking, and definitely observant. The quirks of the jobs were also thoroughly entertaining. I think you would enjoy this one if you like investing in characters and don't need a super intense plot to keep you invested. Overall, a really engaging and solid read.
So many titles to add to my list. This is great. Oh, all right, ladies. Tearjerker of a Love Story, The Things We Keep by Sally Hepworth. Something I love is finding an author, maybe when their big breakout hit happens, and then going to their backlist. And for those of you that don't know, backlists are the books written prior to that said breakout hit, for example. This was one such book for me. This is Sally Hepworth's second book that she wrote. It's a tearjerker of a love story featuring Anna, a 38-year-old who has been recently diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. Her family thinks the best thing to do is to move her into an assisted living home, and they find what is called the Rosa Lind House. But Anna has other ideas. She's not planning on staying at this facility. That is until she meets Luke. He's another resident, similar in age, and he is suffering from frontotemporal dementia. They bond over shared interests and obviously their shared circumstances of being in there together. And you find yourself just so rooting for them and their relationship. And their relationship and friendship does turn into much more as a romance blossoms. But Anna's family steps in. They're concerned she's not capable in this fragile state to maintain a relationship, much less a romance. They insist then that Anna and Luke are kept apart. Enter Eve. She is the new cook at Rosalind House, and she is so charmed and taken by Luke and Anna's tale of star-crossed love. She vows she is going to keep them together at any cost. But does she really understand about the potential dangers that might lie ahead? And working to keep them together could ultimately put her job in jeopardy. The publisher said, with huge heart, humor, and a compassionate understanding of human nature, Sally Hepworth delivers a page-turning novel about the power of love to grow and endure, even when faced with the most devastating of obstacles. You won't forget the things we keep. And I agree, you won't forget this one. Well, that's all, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. See below for the link to the list of titles in our library catalog. Until we meet again, we wish you happy reading and happy listening. Thanks so much for joining us.